Well, today we're going to begin things a little bit differently before service. As I mentioned in our past two newsletter articles, we are going to be undertaking a stewardship campaign at St. Paul's. And in your bulletins, there's actually a half-page handout. If you did not take a bulletin, I know everybody doesn't. Can you maybe just raise your hand so Melissa can give you the handout if you don't have a bulletin on you? Sorry, I kind of switched fast there, Melissa. All right, Hobie's going to come around. Yeah, so this fall at St. Paul's, we're undertaking a stewardship campaign. And one of the things we hope to do here is maybe make this a yearly thing where we have a chance to just talk about the way we handle our finances in light of God's Word. Proverbs 14:8 declares, "The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way." So ultimately, that's what we're going to be about in our stewardship campaign. We're intentionally looking, both as a church leadership, but also as people of the church, we're intentionally looking at how we handle our finances in light of God's Word. So in a nutshell, then, we have to look at really the basics. What is Christian stewardship? And Christian stewardship is simply the faithful management of all we have. And as I said in the newsletter article, it begins with that understanding that everything we have is from God. And he calls us to use it for his purposes. And those purposes are expressed in our various vocations, those things that we have been called to do, whether that be parenting, taking care of aging parents, work, resources, being a good neighbor, that sort of things. But besides these vocations in our family and society, as Christians, we have a vocation, a calling of being a part of a local body of believers. And part of what stewardship entails in this area is giving of our resources. In the handout, actually, I have a good passage that practically deals with that. And this is what we're ultimately focusing about in our stewardship campaign. So, to help us discern our way, and that's really what this first week is about, we're going to look at what God's Word says concerning faithful Christian stewardship in a local body of believers. So my encouragement to you is to simply, this week, alone or with your spouse, go over these questions just to put yourself under the microscope of God's Word to see where you stand. So below, and I had this in our newsletter article, but below is five principles, really, of Christian stewardship. 1, giving is a willing and cheerful endeavor. And so below that are some questions to look at over the week. 2, we give to God our first fruits, not our leftovers. Once again, those are some questions on there. If you flip the page then. 3, giving is a regular undertaking. Again, those are some questions there. Giving is proportional to how God has blessed you. And there's some scriptures and some questions and some ideas to think about. And then 5, we are called to be generous in our giving. And again, there's questions there. So this week is simply all about discerning your way under God's Word. What does Christian stewardship look like in light of God's Word? And again, what this is stewardship is a part of our discipleship, our growth as Christians, and it's something that obviously doesn't get talked about very often in church. So we're just taking this opportunity over the next month to really just zero in and focus upon what God's Word says.